From superheroes to serious graphic novels, comic books have a pretty entertaining history, evolving throughout the decades from a dime store novelty to Pulitzer-worthy literature. This medium can entertain, educate, even inspire. Join us as we learn more in this episode of Half Price Books, all things printed and recorded. Although historians trace the beginning of comics to 18th century Japan, the first real comic book was The Adventures of Obadiah Oldbuck by Swiss author Rudolf Topfer. Released in 1837, this illustrated story featured failed suicides, a duel, and a stint in prison for the main character, but it was still enough of a success to set the standard for sequential pictures with captions, the format for all newspaper comics to come. Before Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man became household names, the rise of small 10-cent books called pulps featured the antics of the very first action heroes. These characters' above-average feats and death-defying stunts paved the way for a whole lot of men in tights. But first, the Funny Papers, an American publication of the 1930s, Famous Funnies, a carnival of comics. It's considered the first modern comic book. It was a hit during the Great Depression and sold 90% of its initial 200,000 print run. The late 1930s marked the arrival of a plane? No, actually it was that guy in red and blue tights. Originally pitched to newspapers back in 1933 by two Cleveland, Ohio high school students, the guy who is otherwise known as the Man of Steel made his official debut in Action Comics #1 in 1938. And the golden age of comics was born. Superman was closely followed by Batman and the Human Torch in 1939. In 1940, the very first superhero team, the Justice Society of America, made their debut. Wonder Woman was roped into the league in 1941 as a secretary, but luckily this feminist archetype was promoted to full-time superheroine shortly afterward, inspiring generations of little girls. Post-World War II, superhero stories declined, although the Japanese comic style known as manga exploded in popularity overseas. The so-called Silver Age of comics featured the rise of racier genres such as horror comics including Eerie, Tales from the Crypt, and The Vault of Horror. Aimed at grown-ups, these grisly tales nonetheless had morality groups up in arms because people felt they corrupted young minds. Publishers were forced to create the Comics Code Authority, the CCA, which banned the words horror, terror, or crime in any titles. The counterculture had an effect on the industry with the rise of underground comics such as 1964's The Adventures of Jesus. Cartoonists like R. Crumb clustered in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury neighborhood to pen stories featuring recreational drug use, politics, rock music, and free love. Far out, Batman! By the early 70s, even traditional superheroes like Spider-Man were battling issues found in modern urban life, such as bigotry and addiction. This so-called Bronze Age was when comics got real. By the 1980s, stories like Watchmen ushered in the Dark Age of comics as they blurred the line between hero and villain. Because of the subject matter and stylized illustrations, comics were finally taken seriously as an art form, and many comic creators went on to become Hollywood directors and screenwriters. American cartoonist Art Spiegelman even took home the Pulitzer Prize for his graphic novel Mouse in 1992. Today's comics are more likely to break the rules than follow them, and you can find a comic or graphic novel exploring almost any interest. Fans attend Comic-Cons all over the world dressed as their favorite characters, proving we all have a little bit of superhero inside all of us. This has been Half Price Books, all things printed and recorded. If you'd like to learn more about the history of the comic book, check out our blog at blog.hpb.com. Later.